Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hello, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. Today we are diving into some wonderful topics, some very interesting topics around women's health, as well as coaching and how coaching can lead to better choices and a more fulfilling life and a more fulfilling business, and looking at the deeper dimensions, those deeper hidden things within ourselves that might actually be causing some pretty serious physical symptoms. So I'm chatting with Alyssa Van Alstyne. She is a Mastery Methods certified coach like myself. We attended the same coaching certification program. And she's a wonderful human being, a beautiful woman who has so much insight into how the mental and the emotional and the unconscious dimensions or layers of ourself can trickle down and start to cause some real physical problems. We share a similar story in being diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. She was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And so we are looking at autoimmune issues relating to women, relating to some of those deeper underlying causes, and how working with a professional, with a coach or a therapist or a healer on some of these deeper issues, these deeper mental, emotional aspects of ourself can actually heal our physical symptoms. And so we are talking about the ethereal as well as the material realms today. And I hope you really love it. I hope that it gives you some inspiration and insight. And if you are struggling with an autoimmune disorder or any other kind of physical pain or physical problems, I would just encourage you to reach out. Reach out to myself, reach out to Alyssa, reach out to someone you trust for support, because we can't go it alone. Trying to tackle these challenges in our life by ourselves is often very lonely and very isolating, and it feels helpless at times. And working with someone who can really help you connect to some of the unconscious places within yourself, some of these deeper levels of energetic healing that need to happen, can sometimes be the most valuable investment you make in yourself and in your health and in your life. And of course, we don't want to say that you should just do this and forgo the medical system. Definitely not. So don't think that we're advocating for ignoring the medical system. Both of us did deep dives into functional medicine and working with professionals in the medical field, naturopaths, and all of the doctors we could talk to and work with. So there is real science happening, but there's also something else that is manifesting on the physical level, and it didn't start at the physical level. So that's what we're going to explore today in this episode. And I just hope that it really serves you and gives you some food for thought, things to think about maybe in your own life when it comes to your health, your wellness, your yoga practice, your physical being, your mental, emotional being, your spiritual being. Just checking in with all those different aspects of yourself today. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm so happy you're here today because we are meeting with a beautiful human who is a coach, a life coach, a business coach, a motivational speaker. She is a dear friend of mine, Alyssa Van Alstyne. Hello, Alyssa. How are you?
Oh, doing so good. I mean, the sun is shining internally, even if it's raining externally. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Harmony.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you and to have a fellow Canadian.
Yeah, something we just discovered.
I know. I know. We both thought that each other lived in America.
Yes, and we've only like known kind of each other for a year and a half. So
Right? I know. Somehow it never came up.
yeah, that's so fun. I love it. It's so good.
I think you're our first guest from Manitoba on the podcast.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I feel special, but yes.
Claim to fame.
Yes.
There's not so many people in Manitoba, you know.
I know it feels big for me, but I don't see much because we're all spread out. So
Yeah, exactly.
okay, awesome.
I think I would love to talk to you today and dive in about your journey, like some of your life journey, your health journey, because I feel like that's really interesting and relevant to our guests. I know a lot of women, it seems like there's just been an epidemic of autoimmune issues coming up, and I don't know if it's stage of life or post-COVID trauma or whatnot, but it seems like a lot of the women that I'm talking to are really struggling, like with sort of health issues, body issues, and feeling a little stuck in what to do and where to turn to.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yes, to women being its own class of health, and also up until not very recently, studies in the medical field not being done on women. So it's new, and I love how the medical field and more of the functional medicine and holistic medicine is going with research studies on women, especially in autoimmune, because there is research that shows 80% of women are going to have an autoimmune condition.
Yeah, wow.
And I would love to share, because that's been a really huge part of my journey. I think longer, but for sure in the last year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I had major health issues with my spine and spinal surgeries. And I'm also my own case study in the world for this bilateral psoas abscess, so an infected spinal prosthesis that stayed in for 6 years because I just kept getting pushed off as, oh, you have fibromyalgia, you have chronic fatigue, you have chronic pain syndrome. So nothing really being done, or you're pregnant, or you're postpartum.
Oh my gosh.
So just really not even a desire to seek or to try to understand, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But also just the reality of the way the medical system is. And at that time too, I didn't know any better to seek outside of that.
Yeah, wow. I heard this funny quote today that really resonates with what you're saying, is that the medical system up until fairly recently just treated women as smaller, more emotional men.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Well, it's so funny because like women are so different. Like you don't have to go any farther than just looking at a man and a woman or studying them for like 2 days. And you're like, yeah, there's some major differences there. I wonder what's underneath the skin that causes those differences, right? So
Yeah.
it blows my mind a little, but I'm also really thankful for my journey because, and I don't know if you want to go dip into the past a little, but kind of fast forwarding to when I was diagnosed last year with an autoimmune condition, with Graves' disease, hyperthyroidism. And I only got my diagnosis in October of last year, but throughout the whole year, I was fainting. I was eating more than 4,000, 5,000 calories a day and losing weight consistently.
Wow.
And I just had my baby in January last year. So I would go into the doctor and I'd say, there's something wrong. And he said, no, you're postpartum.
Oh my gosh.
Or I went in because I was sure I was pregnant because it really disrupts hormones, right? I was like, I'm pregnant. I've done 5 pregnancy tests. That's all say negative. Something's going on. And they say, well, it's probably a urinary infection. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, can someone just please do a blood test? And
wow.
Here's antibiotics. And I took like maybe 1 or 2. And then they're like, no, actually the test came back negative.
Yeah.
And then the next reason was, oh, well, this is your first healthy pregnancy or postpartum. So maybe it's that. I'm like, no, I don't feel good. So finally, months later, when I was like literally passing out when I walked, I couldn't make it up the stairs. And I'm like, well, this feels a lot like when I had this major infection in my body and when everything was disrupted again. And I'm like, I don't want it to be that again, because that was excruciating. So finally going again, and this time I had tachycardia and my resting heart rate was over 100 beats a minute.
Oh my gosh.
So my doctor was like, okay, let's do some blood tests. And the next morning he called, he's like, okay, we're going to do another one, but it looks like you have hyperthyroidism. And I was like, thank goodness. Thank you. What's the next step?
Yeah.
So the funny thing about autoimmune conditions, it's like, well, here's medicine. That's your only option. You're probably going to be on this for the rest of your life, and we're going to monitor you. And I was like, I don't like that. I'm not up for that. And I was really waking up to, I know my body better than anybody else. And throughout the course that we took and everything else, I trust myself, right? I'm going to make the decisions for my body. Yes, I'm going to like seek outside help, but really, if I don't feel good about it, I'm not going to do it. So I sought out a naturopathic doctor, so more along the functional medicine side of things. And we started supplementing my body with gut help and mitochondrial help and just supporting what had been so destroyed from a 6-month antibiotic series that I was on previously, being really sick with infection for about 6 years, plus a lifestyle that previously was full of stress and full of really denying myself. And I was an alcoholic for a while. And I asked for help for that too. And everyone was like, no, we drink too. And I'm like, no, I'm actually worried about it. Like, help me.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just, well, no, we use it too. Or if that's what you need, like that was the support that I had around that. And it wasn't just like a glass of wine here and there. It was like 1 or 2 bottles a day.
Yeah. Wow.
And I did that. That was my pain management because I didn't want to use medicine, right? So I was like, well, this could be better.
Yeah.
And everyone says it's okay. So it's like, very interesting. So really working on supporting my body, getting back to a healthy state. I did still use the medication that was recommended at a really low dose to really help me get back to actually a functioning state. So where I wasn't passing out all the time or my heart didn't feel like it was leaping out of my chest. And yeah, that made things a bit easier. But the main thing was that my main source of medicine was actually lemon balm and rosemary.
Wow.
So I had tea daily because those are both thyroid calmers. Yeah. So that's what I did. That was my medicine. And I was stable. So this was October till January. In January, I got my symptoms like they were still there. It didn't feel good. Like I was still having some lightheaded episode. It felt like my body and my head were not connected. I was still having vision problems and then kind of body jumpiness and some heart stuff. And I'm looking up stuff and I'm like, this seems really related to vagus nerve, which with my past and also my major abdominal surgeries, okay, it could be damaged. It could be stressed. It just could need a lot of love. So I brought this to my endocrinologist and he said, no, just keep doing what you're doing. It's not related. And I'm like, excuse me? Do you know the body at all? So I fired him. I can't go back to you. You're completely dismissing new evidence, right? Like if you look at it just from that point of view, really powerful evidence, right? I'm on medication that should make me stable and supplementing, but these symptoms are popping up. So I started treating my vagus nerve just at home, different breathing techniques, different stretching, with chiropractor, with osteo, just the icing techniques to help calm it, gurgling, humming.
Yeah.
And that's when my TSH levels, my thyroid started functioning properly. It was still kind of touch and go. And I did monthly blood tests. So I was monitoring it on my own and it was amazing. And I'm like, okay, let's keep doing this. And I would kind of try on and off to go off my medication, but wasn't quite there yet because I wanted to make the switch totally to supplements.
Right.
And I wasn't quite there. And I'm like, okay, what else? Because I know it's within me. And this, I love this part. I had a really powerful coaching session, like mind blowing. And it was circling around receiving because I couldn't receive. I couldn't even receive like peer coaching. I couldn't ask for help. I always had a sense that, no, I need to do everything and take care of everything just for my safety, right?
Yeah.
So I had this really powerful session, and this may not sound like much to people outside of community who understand this type of language or anything, but really connecting with the part of me, and it was a really young part that was trying to manage everything, and I was so scared all the time. And she just wanted to hide under a blanket.
Yeah.
But she's the one that was trying to control everything and take care of everything. So really connecting with that part and allowing it to rest.
Yeah.
And just say, I got this. Like, I'm an adult, right? Being at this stage of consciousness, I'm an adult. You can take a rest. You can be however you need to be.
Yeah.
And doing work with that. And it was, I say work with that, but it was about a 30, 40-minute session at that level, connecting with that part. And it's been a daily practice now to just check in and say, what do you need? How can I listen to you?
Yeah.
Because I didn't before.
Yeah.
And since that day, I stopped my medication and my levels have been normal.
Amazing.
So really this whole thing about like mind, gut health, mind, body. And I find in my experience that there's so much involved in seeking inner safety, because that's going to affect the way that your cortisol runs. That's going to affect how you process different things in your body. So for me, seeking that safety, which also opened doorways to me booking travel for the first time in like so long. It was like a switch flick. Or
a switch flicked. A flick of the switch?
Yeah, where was that? It was like all of a sudden, okay, I don't need my phone on me at all times for emergencies. Okay, I can relax and sit back and enjoy the children. Let's book some trips. Let's go have fun. Right? And just this really deep inner knowing of, I'm fine. Like, I'm good now. I'm allowing myself to rest, which is really helping my healing.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah.
What you're saying resonates so much because it's so funny. Another thing we have in common, I was also diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder last year. The opposite, hypothyroidism.
Okay.
And I think everything you're saying really resonates with, and it's so funny because, you know, I teach yoga, I teach mindfulness, I know all about vagus nerve regulation.
Yeah.
Heart-centered breathing and heart coherence and all of the things, all of the tools. But it's interesting. I think there's something, it could be anything in life, but maybe even just like coming out of this somewhat traumatic COVID period. Not traumatic in a way of like intense trauma. I mean, in some ways it was quite enjoyable, but feeling not safe at a very unconscious, deep level of things aren't normal and it's not safe to relax because things were always changing. Like one day, yes, next day, no, one day, mask, next day, no. Did you get vaccinated? Did you not get vaccinated? So much conflict. And so it really felt, I think, at a unconscious level, very unsafe. And I think it's really interesting that you bring up how sometimes these experiences can really trigger old parts of ourselves and go back to that time when we felt unsafe as a child, a very young child, potentially, and the management strategies we used as a young child to create safety and control in our environments.
Yeah.
And how even just that energetic kind of connection, I mean, the way a child controls their environment and the way an adult controls their environment is very different. It looks different, but the energy is the same. And going back and needing to go in and heal that pattern in order to heal the condition.
Yeah. And I think I want to highlight that because that is just really key to what you're saying, right? We're not healing symptoms, right? Which is the way, if you go into the medical field, it's like, oh, you feel tired. Okay, let's pop some caffeine pills or give you this to regulate that, right? Like, we're not doing that. Or you feel or get tired, or just go sit in front of the screen for a while, right? No, it doesn't help. It is really underlying. And I found this really helpful diagram when I was starting to do my searching for all these things. And it's about hormones, and you have your little, it's a triangle diagram. So your top tier is like your progesterone, your estrogen, your sex hormones, your thyroid hormones. And second, and then the base, which is what everything is based on, cortisol and insulin, and one more that's not coming right to mind. And the big takeaway from that was when you have your top tiers out of regulation, you don't regulate those, you go lower. Because then we're looking at your stress, we're looking at your lifestyle factors, we're looking at your inner experience, right? Because you could say, well, this is how I've always lived, right? I don't have much stress in my life. And I remember I actually did that when I was at my first naturopathic doctor appointment. I was like, no, I'm pretty good. I don't have much stress. And then actually slowing down and looking at it, I was like, oh, I'm constantly stressed. It's like, hurry to this, do this, make sure they're okay, checking on this. And it was real. It took a lot of slowing down to actually acknowledge, just because you've been doing it this way doesn't mean that it's not there, right? Just because this is the norm doesn't mean that there's not stress or anxiety or other things. And I was living in a constant state of stress and anxiety. And that was really amazing just to catch myself in that, right? Because we've been working on consciousness and awareness and all of that for so long now. And to actually catch myself and be like, oh, you were trying to pull that blanket over because it was just normal, right? Because your nervous system was used to being in that constant state of stress.
Yeah, and we start to feel safe in that state, right? Even if it's an unhealthy pattern, because it's normal or it's consistent and usual, we think, oh, well, this is the way I feel safe in this pattern. If you don't know anything different, then sometimes relaxing, sometimes slowing down feels more dangerous.
Yes, which is such a great point, right? Because we have in your practice as well too with our clients, it's we're doing something new that's healthy, right? That's spacious. That's really questioning the way that we used to do things. But it's scary, and there's such like an unconscious fear to it because it's not normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting too, this point that you're bringing up. And I'm just curious if some of the people listening, they have a really regular, consistent, like 2-hour yoga practice that they do every morning. And what I found in my own sort of going through all this was that all those practices that you know are supposed to be regulating and de-stressing you actually were dysregulating and creating the stress.
Yeah.
And it's like the attachment to having to have this practice show up in your life in this very specific, particular kind of way, and engaging with it from this place of a past self and trying to like force it onto your current state actually was creating a lot of the, mismatch of energy and alignment, and was actually creating dis-ease rather than healing and health and wholeness, which you would expect. And it was so frustrating because people were like, well, you should do some yoga. You should do some breathing. And I'm like, I do that all day long. Like, you don't understand.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a really important point because there's a why are you doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Am I doing it out of fear? Am I doing it out of inspiration? And one really beautiful way to slow down is if I stopped, what would I fear would happen?
Yeah.
And if it's like, well, I'd miss it, that's not a fear. But if it's like, well, then I'm going to lose my concentration, or I won't be able to function during the day, or I'm going to tumble into these other habits. That's out of fear. So that's something deeper that needs to be worked with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I love that because I think looking at that fear of what do you fear will happen if you don't do the thing or if you don't, and it's the same with any addiction. What do you fear will happen if you don't drink the glass of wine at night?
Yeah. Or one that I have, I work more life and business right now. So with my clients, it's more of a, okay, if I slow down from work, if I'm not working all the time, right? If I step away, what would I fear would happen? And usually it's tied to a sense of worth, right? Then I'm not providing enough, or then I'm not doing enough, or then I'm not valuable as a person if I'm not working, right? Because we have in North America, especially, there's this really strong attachment to your self worth with your career, right? When you go meet someone new or talk to someone, it's how's work going or what do you do, as that's who you are as a person. Versus now when I get asked that question, it's like, well, I sit around with my kids, we hang out. I still have a successful business, but it's like, that's not who I am and that's not what I do, right? Like my life is about my family and my health. And I love gardening. And in Canada, we don't have very long of a season to garden. So I'm also like a gardener at heart and like really finding ways to create a healthy environment. And I do lots of regenerative styles. So really, let's take care of the earth and our bodies and let's work together, right? That's the basis of me. And well, still not even the basis of me, right? Because it's so much deeper. And I want to lead into something else with that point, because at the beginning of my health journey, coming out of high school, throughout high school, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. So an achiever, right? So yes, sisterhood in that. And I wanted to go in the medical field. I wanted the Olympics for volleyball. That was my sport. I just wanted to do and give and achieve. And just, I wanted the cover of a magazine. I remember that's my goal. Once I have the cover of a magazine, then I'll be important. Right. And then I had a spinal injury and I was also top academically and all these other things. And I went from, at the time, being in university, and I worked at a restaurant and volleyball refereeing to supplement my income then. And I went from not having to write down anything for orders taken, no matter how many tables or how big the order was, to if I didn't write down a glass of water, when they said it, it was gone. Losing cognitive function, focus. I had to stop every single physical thing that I was doing. The only thing that I was doing was working.
Wow.
And then sitting or resting for the most part. And I fought that hard. But it was to the point too, where if I could have done something all day, every day after I got that injury, I would have liked to hide in a closet because I didn't even want to be around people because I had such a loss of identity, right? Like I couldn't achieve. I couldn't work out. I couldn't be involved in sports. I could barely work. I couldn't even talk to people because I didn't have a memory to actually think of what we were talking about. Plus my body hurt so bad. And I remember sitting at the bus stop shortly after it happened and missing my bus because I didn't know I was at the bus stop to go to school or university. And it was like, what do I do? And at the time, I think I don't even know how old I was. I was 22, 23 when that happened. And being at that age and otherwise looking very physically healthy, I was just always told, you're young and healthy, you'll get better. And I was told that for 10 years. And I got consistently worse and then brushed off. You have chronic this or chronic that or fibromyalgia, which to acknowledge if you have fibromyalgia, if you have that on your chart, it's really hard to be taken seriously by any doctor for anything, just the way that the system is right now. And it's used as such a blanket diagnosis. I don't think there is such a thing as fibromyalgia. Like there isn't. There's
Yeah.
underlying things, right? There's always a cause.
Yeah.
There's never no for pain. Your body is a healing machine and it heals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it's not something preventing it, right?
Yeah. And it's trying to. I mean, in my coaching, I've been integrating a lot of spinal energetics. So I love that you're talking about the spine.
I want to pick your brain about that.
Yeah. But it's so vital because as you say, like a physical injury Or, I mean, it doesn't even have to be an injury. It can just be the pattern of holding tension in the body. It's all connected to our spine. Our spine is connected to our brain, and it's electrical signals running up and down, and then disruption or areas where we're holding pattern or a slightly twisted vertebra or whatever it is can really change how we're feeling in ourselves, how we're perceiving ourselves, how we're perceiving the world. But then on top of that, we have these other layers of ourself, which I know both you and I coach on, right? Which is like our emotional body and how that's being affected by our experience, our past, our history, our mental body. How are we in our heads? How are we processing things? Our collective community body, who's in our group, how we're showing up, our identity within sort of our communal space. And then also that personal soul connection of who am I? What am I here for? Am I living my dharma or my purpose in life? And what is that? And do I feel like I'm connected to it? And so all of these things show up in our spine, show up in our physical body. And they might have these causes in these other layers, as we talked about, right? This small child who felt emotionally unsafe trying to control her environment shows up in your emotional experience of the present moment. And it's the same with all these other aspects of ourself too. And I think it's so important what you're bringing up here, that we have to actually heal at all these different layers and levels of ourself and different ages and stages in our life. All this unconscious stuff has to come up into our awareness for us to see it so that we can heal it. We have to see it to heal it. We have to feel it to heal it. We have to become conscious of it so that we can at least start to work with it. Because if it's just stuck in our unconscious, we don't know what we don't know. But it still affects us. It still influences how we are in the world, how we're interpreting other people or experiences or ourselves. So it's so important. And all of this healing can happen sometimes unconsciously too, right? Like if you're tapping into the right sort of aspects of yourself, it just starts to kind of fix itself, right? Like when you realize, oh, I'm letting a 4-year-old run my life right now. And I can just be with her and love up on this part of myself that feels unsafe or feels like she needs to control everything. You don't actually have to do anything. You just have to become aware of that part of yourself. And in seeing it, everything starts to change and shift. It's really like magical in a way.
It is. And like you're saying, like it doesn't have to require too much effort, right?
Yeah.
But it is part of the conscious community as well.
Yeah.
Whereas the normal tendencies, right? If you're not involved in these types of communities or this type of support, then the go-tos are entertainment or avoidance, right? And I love what we were taught in just the basis of our program and how it's harder not to feel a feeling than it is to actually feel a feeling, because that takes 90 seconds for it to pass through, right? And if everybody knew that, and had proper guidance, but we were brought up with such a fear, at least in my experience, and from what I hear of for lots of people, it's to really fear our feelings or to really judge them. And then we're stuck with it, right? In these beautiful, I say shame loops, because there is a purpose for them, but there's also a way out of them. And that can be so easy. And I have a client that just had this beautiful experience 4 months in. And I'm finding more in my practice that the gold really happens 4 months and beyond. So I've decided I'm not taking any shorter containers anymore, which just from a service point, I really want to serve the people that I'm working with. And I don't want to end it right before we hit the gold, right? Like it's amazing. And with our session, she's done lots of work in beautiful place of consciousness, but getting back into her community after traveling in India for a while, because she does yoga and she's really involved in that too. And it was a 20-minute transformation, really tending to that part. And then she was like, my life is changed in seeing just the way that she was relating to people, her mother especially, and how big of an impact that has. She's like, oh, I don't need her to be different. I don't need her to provide this safety and security and nourishment that I've been looking for my whole life, because I was expecting her to give it to me. I got this. And then everything changes. And it's really, it sounds so almost woo-woo. It changes everything. Once you change the relationship with yourself and actually insourcing that safety, that nourishment, so you don't have to depend on everything outside of you to give you what you need, right? Because that is so just temperamental and such a roller coaster. So it's really, it was amazing to witness, because for her, it was like just a light bulb. It was so easy. And I'm like, oh, this is why I do what I do, right? Like, just to see these parts.
Yeah.
And just hearing the statement, like, yeah, I got me. I'm good now.
Yeah.
I can let them be however they want to be. I can speak up if I need to, but I'm good. Like, it's mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a subtle shift. It's such a small shift, but you're right. It makes such a profound difference when you stop looking outside of yourself and expecting things outside of you to change and start looking inside of yourself and recognizing the thing outside of yourself is just reflecting an insecurity or something that you don't like about your own self. I had this experience the other day where I was thinking about someone, or I saw someone that I know, an old friend on Instagram, and whatever they were doing or the way they were speaking, it was like a little bit of the relationship didn't end well, like many years ago, like almost 20 years ago. And so the healings happened in that. I don't hold like any resentment or anything, but it's so interesting, right? People can trigger sort of things in you. And just the way he's talking on Instagram, I was like, oh, he's so like egotic. And it just triggered this old like reaction in me, seeing all this ego and all this stuff. And then I paused and I was like, okay, where's that in you? Because if you're seeing it in him, that's your own ego coming up, saying, well, I'm better than you because I'm not so egotic, right? Which is the ego.
Isn't that so fun? I mean, now it's fun.
Yeah. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I saw it and was able to be like, oh, well, that's me. I'm just seeing myself there and judging myself. Mm-hmm. It was like all of the power or all of the potency of it totally dissolved. Mm-hmm. And then I was just laughing and I was like, oh man, we're just all full of bullshit. You know, and like you said, it became fun. It was like, oh, well, that's just me and my own little ego trip that I'm on. And then it was fine. Then I wasn't at all triggered. But it's so fascinating how the freedom is actually in recognizing that it's actually all your own stuff. When you have that sore spot, you know, or that sort of charge around something.
Yeah.
It's really something that you're charged about against yourself. The judgment is always you judging your own self.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that we're getting into this. I do the work pretty daily, Byron, whenever I notice something coming up, especially in my relationship, right? Like, relationships are so beautiful for bringing up that charge.
Yeah.
And I want to share one of mine because I think it's really beautiful, but I was stuck with it for quite a while. And my judgment, and this was while I was sick and then afterwards as well, was that my husband wasn't doing enough.
I think a lot of women can relate to this judgment.
He should do more. He's not doing enough.
Yeah.
And then really turning that around and coming back on me was how hard I judged myself, right? For a while I was sick, while I wasn't capable of doing enough. Once I took the charge off, that was a really big part in my healing journey, because this was after major surgeries when I was getting better. And then instead of waiting for him to do something or trying to tell him or ask him, it was, oh, I'm capable, right? Oh, I can develop this part of me now that's been so underwhelmed because I haven't physically been able to do anything. So really seeing the gifts that come along, and it's a part too that just really wants to call attention, right? He doesn't do it in the most effective way. Sometimes it's really like in other people's faces, but once we put that mirror there and it's like, oh no, what does it have to tell me? I'm curious too with your friend, when that egoic kind of role came up, what was it? Was it, oh, I need to put myself out there more. I need to speak up or take up more space. That's a big one with women, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in that instance, it was just more of like seeing the trigger and recognizing that I actually don't need to like be affected by that anymore, that this person didn't have any power over me actually, and that I had my own power and my own place in the world, and that he could be however he wanted to be, and it didn't have to mean anything about me.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful too. It's a really big shift when you get to that point where it's like they can be however they want to be. It doesn't mean anything about me. And I think that's just shifting it, because I do a lot of work with parents as well. Shifting that to the parent-child relationship. The way that I grew up and in my community, it was the child's behavior reflected how the parents were. I just want to take a knife, like an axe to that kind of connection right there, because that's so much pressure on just a child who's learning how to develop, learning how to trust and find themselves and who they are without all the added pressure of you reflect your parents.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's just one change could be made in parenting relationships, or just examined or looked at a little bit more. That would elevate so much. Oh, my child can be their own person. It doesn't show up on me at all. They're learning how to express and about emotions, and they actually can do it better than adults. Have you noticed that? It's so beautiful. If a child is needing to express sadness or anger, it's literally like a minute and a half. And then they just go on their way as if nothing happened. Like, it's really confusing to see if you're not aware of the science behind it. It's like, are they crazy? Right? Like, how did they do that? Like, they were angry. They're supposed to be angry for a long time now. But that's because of all this repression that we were taught. Don't be sad. Don't be angry.
Yeah, it's true. My son's a teenager now, and so he has like all kinds of mood swings going on.
Yes. Well, that in itself is just an amazing period.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because also sometimes, he's like agitated or irritated, and he'll just respond in this way that's like, rah, in a kind of angry way. And if you don't take it personally, if you just sort of are like, all right, you don't have to like call attention to it even so much. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, you can say that a little nicer. I'm just checking in. I'm just talking, But you don't have to like build on it.
Yeah.
Which often happens, right? When someone speaks harshly, then you speak harshly back. It's like this little mirror effect starts happening rather than just accepting it and being like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Or like, did something go wrong today? How are you feeling? What's going on?
There was this beautiful piece that I read on teenagers and that experiential time where everything in their bodies is going crazy, right? Hormones galore. If we think about pregnancy, condense that into a teenage experience. If we just think of it that way, with just like hormone fluctuations and everything, it makes sense. And at the end of the day, like, the only thing that we can do is just, I'm here for you, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, it's true. It's so interesting. I always feel like when you're a mom of young kids, and your kids are pretty young, right?
Yeah, 1, 3, and 5. My 5-year-old, I'm like, is this the teenage experience with my 5-year-old? I'm like, he has a voice, and oh my goodness, he is just set on it, and he will disagree. And I have to remind myself, because this is a new way of parenting for me and for my generational line. And I'm like, okay, that's good, right? If he can disagree with me, that means it's safe to have his own opinion. I have to just calm myself, because I wasn't allowed to do that, right? Like, don't disagree with me. You're doing it my way. So it's like, okay, no, it's okay. Deep breaths, right? So just, acknowledging that part too. It's not easy. It's not necessarily a normal way of raising your children, normal, or the way that most people do it, right? So it's hard.
Yeah. I know, conscious parenting. It's like, I think every stage, every time you get the trick of the stage and you're like, okay, I got it. And then they go to the next stage and you're like, oh no, I got to figure it out again.
And I love, there was this beautiful reflection. I forget I think I read it multiple places, but your kids will trigger you when they reach the age when you weren't allowed to be authentic or express. So at the age that you weren't respected, something along those lines. And that's so powerful. And that just does such a beautiful job to just turn the mirror on you. Because kids, if you think about it, they're just acting the way they should be. There's such this innate sense of following their hormones, and there's such this attachment to their body and the way that they are. It's absolutely amazing. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to. And just put the mirror up. Why am I caught up in this? What's it telling me about me? And what didn't I receive at this stage of development when I was young?
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful too. I think to do your own work first, I think you can only parent from that place. When you're like, am I getting triggered because I'm feeling disrespected? And doing your own work around that. Do I need to feel disrespected? Is it true I'm being disrespected?
Right?
And and then when you're not triggered, you can then look and say, is there a lesson that my child can learn from this in a way that will be helpful for them? So we often try and do something like that. You know, if he's being or acting in a way that's maybe disrespectful or aggressive for no reason, all the testosterone, we then would say, hey, it's fine for you to be this way here, but when you're at school or you're with other people, you want to check in before you respond with that kind of tone, because other people might take offense. And then it's received, actually. He really receives it when it's talked about that way, as like, hey, listen, it's cool. You know, you just got home from school. You can be however you need to be. But just make sure if you're not with us, you're checking in with your tone, because it's kind of rude.
Yeah. Or even just like an alternative, or just repair, right? How do we repair? And I'm learning that too as we're going through new stages. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to lose it once in a while. I'm human, right? We all are. Like, we're all doing the best we can, especially with parenting. And I remember too, my first child being sent home from the hospital. It's like, you're letting me go home with this little person? I don't know what to do. And I think that's the story of parenting, especially with firstborns. And I think there's something so powerful and unique and special about firstborns. Everything is new as they grow. And it's like their younger siblings at least get like more of a healed version of us, depending. It's all so new and we're all learning. And I think the biggest thing is about repair. And that's part of the learning process. Yeah, I yelled, I raised my voice. I had anger, and I'm sorry. That I'm not sorry for my anger, but I'm sorry that I behaved that way. Next time, mommy's going to check in. I'm going to take some deep breaths, and then we can go from there. Like, we start over, right?
Yeah, totally. There's something so beautiful about that. I mean, I've lost my shit on my son so many times.
Yeah.
But then it is the real transformation. I think also the bond and the safety in the relationship too. The security in the relationship comes when you're like, hey, listen, I just want to apologize to you. I really lost it and it wasn't your fault. Whatever you need to say, like, I was having a lot of stress from earlier in the day, and this just really pissed me off. I felt a lot of anger around this issue. It wasn't fair for me to project that onto you in this way, or however you need to repair the relationship, because I think then it also allows, you know, the child to know that it's okay. Like, it's okay to mess up, and it's okay to get mad, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to have all these emotions. And you can still repair and trust people, that it's not going to ruin the relationship, right?
Yeah. I think that ties so much into being genuine and being authentic, and not leading into those codependent and enmeshed relationships where, especially when I grew up too, I was responsible for my parents' emotional state, for their behavior, for their image, like all these things, right? As a little child, just trying to like pee in the toilet, right? That's what I was focused on, or playing, or all these things. And instead I was responsible for like huge things, right? And for people where I was earning love, right? Earning love and earning safety. So I think it's really powerful to let them know you can be however you want to be. Like, you're going to have anger, you're going to have sadness. And I am too. And we can come together and we can discuss ways that we want to be together, or how we're going to work through it, but it's okay. I love how we're going from topic to topic. This is really fun. I just want to acknowledge that because like when you think about it too, it's all tied together. When we think about the way we were raised, to how we do relationships, to our health and our internal experience, it's so connected. And I love that.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you a question because I think it like to just like layer in one more aspect of life.
Yeah, let's do it.
In your own experience or when you're working with clients and the clients or yourself have started to kind of connect the dots around this maybe codependency growing up, the expectations you took on as a child for your parents' well-being, for their relationships, how it's affected you, but then also how you're showing up in your business. So how have you noticed having this awakening of understanding what you've taken on at an unconscious level, and then you bring that into your conscious mind? How has that shifted where you're showing up in your own business? Or if you have a client situation that you could share with us, how someone has changed something about their own business?
That's really, really beautiful because it shows up so profoundly. And I know you're feeling this too. Well, to talk about me, if I think just about the achiever part, the need to be seen for my accomplishments and tie that in with over responsibility for other people. Really, the way that I started out my business, it was, okay, I have to go from 0 to 100. So having extremely high expectations, and they weren't even mine. It was all, what can I do to get attention so people know that I'm doing good? Is it a money amount? Is it the way that I appear in certain social media? So really realizing from that standpoint that, no, I need to come back to my own value system of what I want my life and my business to look like. Because what I was doing before, I was really like on a hamster wheel. And I wasn't achieving much because my expectations were up here and they didn't mean anything to me. It was really living out of a sense of fear. Like, if I get this, I'm going to be okay then. If I get the cover of a magazine, then I'll be okay. If I make $1 million next year, then I'll be okay. And coming from a point of being on disability, not able to work for, I think it was 6 years, to having my third child and major surgeries, and then getting diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, and those being my expectations, but coming out of fear. It wasn't inspiring. It didn't drive me. It didn't open me up and create spaciousness. It was just so constricted and so narrow that when I finally started working with those parts and started really allowing myself to relax and expand and define my own value system, then I created the business of my dreams, which is working 10 to 15 hours per month, which is not being on social media, which is not needing to be validated by other people. But I get to spend my time in play with my family and in the garden and in nature and really healing environments. And I still feel every once in a while it comes up, oh no, you need to do more because you're not achieving enough, right? You need to be seen. You need to grow. You should have more clients. And then taking a step back and really honoring that part of me because it wants me to do great things. And it's like, well, I'm already doing great things. Let's just shift. And then also acknowledging too, I was part of hustle and grind culture. And I did really well before I got sick. Like, I did really well in those types of sales environments. And that was a great ego boost. But then getting sick coming out of that again, and it was just like a deflate. It was like, oh no, you're worthless again. And I love the way the company that I was with was set up so well for that type of culture for achievers. Because it was weekly leadership boards, it was different bonuses, it was hustle, 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 and then party hard, right? That thing. So it was really like an all out, like ego driven company, very values based, but definitely playing to the ego, and really fun to like kind of look at that now and acknowledge it. Because I could go back and I probably would do the same thing, grow really fast and then burn out really fast because it's not aligned. Well, I think in general with women's physiology, it's a very male driven field, which is totally fine. And I think my mentality going in there too was like, well, I need to be better. than the guys at this, then I'll have my worth. But also, I love that there's more coming out about cycle syncing and really honoring our moon cycle and the way that we are and how we play to strengths and what we do that complements the masculine versus pushing just to be masculine, because that's going against everything within us. So I think there's a really beautiful way to blend that. And I love the 2-3 days a month where it's like full masculine. Let's do this. And then the rest is more gentle, right? Like the beauty about it is we get it all. It's a roller coaster. Like it's a ride and it's a journey, and learning how to honor each of those parts is something I'm really getting into. And I definitely feel the distinction between each of those phases now. And it's fun. But it's also, I definitely have to get my head around that 2-3 day period and then the come down after. And I think that's my hardest transition at the moment.
I love that you say it, even when it's a values-based company, it can still be like pushing this pattern of the ego, the achiever, which is quite unhealthy. I mean, when you just kind of look at it, when you're really full on into that pattern, you're not taking care of yourself. You're sacrificing yourself to whatever ego gain or desire or status you think outside of yourself is going to make you feel good. And it's fascinating because I think often I could relate so much to growing up and this younger version of myself that probably, around age 7 decided that I had to be twice as good as any boy or any man, and it was like a real conscious thing for me. It was like, no, I'm going to be better than all the boys. I remember arm wrestling in grade 6, just like beating them because they hadn't had any testosterone kick in yet, so such a good feeling, like, I
love that you brought that up because I remember that very distinctly too. My competition wasn't the girls. My competition was all the boys. Really interesting, hey? Like just so interesting.
Yeah. And how that pattern like plays out even in my yoga practice, like going to Mysore and I'm like, I'm going to be twice as good as all these guys here. I'm going to go down in Krandavasana and lift up. I'm going to do all the push-ups. I'm going to do the back bends and grab my thighs. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to get certified. I'm going to beat the pants off of all these guys.
Yeah. Isn't that like, it's amazing. It really is. And then where did it come from? Right? Like, where did that, and then, but also too, I found more safety with guys, and then women was always like a different type of competition. And I think that's really, really prevalent because from when I grew up, there was always women against women.
Yeah, there still is.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, it was always the need to somehow put down. It's not let's lift each other up or I'm admiring you. It's no, I need to put you down. There's a story my mom always said about me. Alyssa she doesn't get along with other girls. And I was like, I never liked that. That always tripped me up. She's like, yeah, you just don't get along with other girls. And I'm like, wow, you're like totally putting this on me. And that's like half of the world that I'm not going to get along with. And I'm like, that's really interesting. And I grew up with just brothers, like mostly male cousins. And my mom had 2 sisters and 1 brother. And there was a lot of rivalry there. And I'm like, is this her story from there that I'm just getting? And from our conversation before we started, noticing all the stuff that's projected and put on if we're not in a conscious relationship. There is a lot, especially the mother-daughter relationship is really complex. I don't know another word. That's kind.
I think complex is good.
Yeah, complex. And yes, it can evolve and be really beautiful, but it is a really complex relationship. And I'm going to dive into that relationship and the healing. And I'm a little apprehensive.
I think what's been really nourishing for me actually is in the last 10-ish years, maybe, but especially in the last 5 years, is being in these online communities and spaces and like meeting women like you in the Institute for Coaching Mastery and other coaching programs that I've been involved with and in the coaching field. I've completely trained under women coaches, basically. But this connection and this meeting other women who are so supportive and so nurturing and really uplifting, and being a part of a community of women that are lifting each other up and supporting each other. And it's not competitive, it's collaborative. It's just been a real healing for me, actually, because I also had a very similar experience. And I think it was also the culture at the time, maybe. Like, I don't think it's a unique experience. I think women often feel very competitive or fearful of other women judging them or putting them down or putting them in their place. And I've gotten my own fair share of it. Like, it doesn't come unwarranted. You post something on social media and you know what? Guys don't respond with criticism. Only women respond with criticism. And it's like, what is going on here, people? So I think it's been really healing to just be with other women. In my business, I work with all women, not necessarily completely as clients. I do have a couple male clients, but my supporting team who helps me in my business are all women, and they're amazing. And I love them like family. And it's just been so nice to be in an environment where women are actually supporting women. I think there's such power in that. We have to continue to shift this as a culture because it's unhealthy. Like, it's like this masculine force trying to kill the feminine energy, and it's not going to happen.
That's true. Yeah. But there's this thing, it's like that old saying, divide and conquer. And this is probably for another time, but if you want to get into the history of witches and in that sense, there was a very good time where the threat was the wise woman and that way of being and that sisterhood and how it got broken up. And I think generationally, I was listening to a podcast on it, and it was the very first time I listened to something on that. And I felt a deep, just like emotional wound. And I just started weeping. And I was in my car listening to this, driving to an appointment. And I was like, I've never really given this any thought, and how that affected me so much. I'm like, oh, there's something there. And it's not mine. It might not even be the generation before, but I don't know where it's coming from, but it's there on a collective. And to shift and to heal that relationship with women with each other, and then women with men. And then like there's all the other things that come once that healing is happening, and the way that we relate to each other and ourselves. And it's big. Like that's a big shift. So I'm excited for that because I feel like it's coming.
It is, sister. I've gotten so many like downloads about this. Just you talking about it, I got shivers all over my whole body.
Yeah. So I think the way that we're going, like there's going to be huge shifts, and I'm looking forward to it, and just how humanity is going to change. I don't even know what it'll look like. There's like this, I don't want to say static because it's bigger than that, but this pulsing type of energy with that.
Yeah. And it's connected to something that you said earlier, which is healing ourselves, and this deep healing that's happening at the root of who we are collectively is also going to heal the planet. And the energy of the planet is the divine feminine. And it's calling. It's not going to be suppressed any longer.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love the way that you talk about things too. It's just your realm of expertise and the connection points that you have. I love hearing from you. And it's so fun to go back and forth talking. It's such an honor. I love this.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy you came on our podcast today. It was so good talking to you. Tell everyone where they can come and receive coaching and guidance from you.
I love that question. And it's not an easy one. I am mostly an offline coach. We were talking about my inabilities with social media. The best place to reach me would be Instagram. I am starting to populate that just so I am online in small capacity. So that's at Van Alstyne Alyssa. And then if you want to, I can drop my Calendly link for if someone feels like, yeah, let's chat. Then I can offer that as well. But that is my only online space.
Perfect. We'll have all of those in the show notes so people can come and find you and have beautiful conversations like this one.
Yeah, thank you. Such an honor.
Thank you so much. That was just so amazing. What a fun conversation. I learned so much, and I hope you did too. If you would love to go deeper and take your practice off your yoga mat and into your life, into the world, starting to learn more about pranayama, developing a regular practice, chanting, tuning into the vibrations and the Sanskrit mantras, as well as looking at some of the more esoteric philosophical concepts, come on in to my Inner Circle mentorship. This is a private community that's online. I offer weekly Mysore classes in addition to these monthly workshops and special programs. And you can find out all the information when you join the Finding Harmony community. Head on over to community-harmonyslater.com. Join the community and come on into my Inner Circle mentorship. I would love for you to be a part of this beautiful space and start growing into the full richness of this yoga practice together with me. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.